Hello, my friends. Time for a sit down with JB to just talk about what to think about restoring a car. If you want to take on a project yourself, hire someone, maybe you're the buyer, maybe you're the restorer, but definitely get in the head of what happens through the process and just talk about it. So this is less show and more tell, and I hope you enjoy it. What should I know before I get into something that I'm going to regret?
I think job number one is to pick the right car.
Okay.
You can't fix a really bad car by going to a good company. You can't be a good person and fix a bad car.
Well, now, what do you mean by a bad car?
A bad car is a car, let's take a bench value, because this is ultimately about value. If you can spend whatever you want on your grandmother's four-door sedan, but if practicality enters into it, you have to be mindful of the fact that every car has a value. The value guides are published. They tend to be inaccurate, unfortunately, especially when it comes to rare cars, and Zephyrs are no exception. They don't track the few sales that are going on out there on rare cars. So, and quite frankly, most of them change hands outside of the public.
If
so
it's a private transaction, there's nobody to record it.
Exactly, and people are not forthcoming usually in telling other people how much they paid or how much they charged.
Right.
So it's one of those things you have to kind of figure out for yourself. A lot of research by talking to the accepted experts in the subject, get a broad base, go out and interview for yourself people that are interested in a particular car, and make sure that they have a lot of background in that particular car, not just in cars in general, and kind of ask them very pointed questions about getting the motor rebuilt, getting the paintwork accomplished. Is that it's not always the same place.
If you say ask the right questions, for example, on a motor,
Yes.
what questions should I be asking?
Are there people available to rebuild it?
Mm-hmm.
Are there an adequate amount of parts, irrespective of the problems that you might find when you open the motor up?
Mm-hmm.
What are the shortcomings in terms of parts availability? And do your research. You can do all this before you buy the car. This doesn't take a lot of time, but it takes some intensive effort and some help on the part of other people. Fortunately, most car people are very helpful and very honest and very straightforward. Unfortunately, in every industry you have some knuckleheads, and I'm not sure it's that difficult to identify them, because generally all they talk about is money. That's knucklehead rule number one, is when money is constantly on their mind, you can pretty much bet that you're in the wrong place talking to the wrong guy. If, on the other hand, the satisfaction of the customer, their love of cars is something that you can assess, I would do that first. I would say, do you think that this individual that I'm talking to about restoring my car or building an engine actually cares about them? Now, that may sound odd, but in order for a person to be really good at what he does, he has to really like it, he has to care about what he's working on, and he has to give it something other than a monetary value. Okay, and rare cars, beautiful cars, aren't always adjudicated based on how much they're worth. There are lots of beautiful cars that aren't that expensive.
Okay.
So let's take this into the wider market, and if you have a car that, let's say, 69 Mustang, 69 Camaro are two pretty good examples. That there are a lot of them out there. Some of them are done well. There are some benchmarks that you can use. You can look at auction results. You can call around and talk to experts and find out roughly what the range is of values, and then you operate in that range of values. So if you're looking at a car, let's use an example of 69 Camaro, which is a very popular car to restore. If you look around and you can find one that's fully restored for probably about what you'd spend or a little more, you don't need to be restoring one. You need to go buy one. Okay.
Yeah, turn yourself into a buyer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes it's not as much fun. It's never as much fun. There's
yeah.
the journey, as you're going to find out, is a lot more fun than actually owning them. Because along the way, you meet a lot of really dedicated people that have spent a lot of their own personal time dedicated to that particular automobile. And they have a love for it and a passion that is impossible to hide. If it's always about money, 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 then you're talking to the wrong person. You need to talk to people that actually care about them, see their historical value, their beauty, their place in the automotive world is also important in my way of thinking. So you need to get with those people irrespective of what model and what make and that you're working with, and educate yourself. There are good books out there on almost every subject. The internet is full of information, some of it not so hot, to be honest. We've made fun of some of the things that are on the internet occasionally that are, ass backwards and flying backwards in one case. So you got to be really careful, get confirmation on things. And when you see somebody spouting off information, you find out that half the things he's saying are not really true, you throw his information away and discount it and go on and get somebody else.
Potentially a customer, they call you up and they start a conversation. What are some clues that they're on the wrong track when they...
If money is the first thing they discuss, this works on both ends.
Okay.
If a customer is concerned about what a car is worth and that's the first thing out of his mouth, around here, we're done. We're not going to spend, I'm going to be cordial with the man. I'm going to try and let him down easy. But if your whole mentality about automobiles is the same way they think about hog jowls and pork bellies, you need to go find something else to do, okay? Because cars will make you crazy if you try to figure them out on that same basis.
Okay.
They are not about money. They are about you're genuinely caring about the automobile and getting satisfaction from that.
Okay.
If the only satisfaction you're getting is by buying it for one price and selling it for more, that's not something I even understand, and I don't ascribe to it. So if the people that are buying the cars, if that's their only interest, you're already in trouble.
Yeah. Okay.
You can go to an auction and buy cars all day long. You don't need to get involved in the restoration process. Yeah, how many of these have you done? Would be a really good question for starters. Now, that plays into the whole parts availability, the experience. If you're going to be paying a certain amount of money, hard-earned money, to educate the guy who's restoring your car because he really doesn't know what he's doing, that's probably not money well spent.
Right.
The other thing that is something to look out for is that when they do something wrong, they're going to defend it as if it was not wrong, which is another argument you don't need to have.
Right.
You need to have discussions with the restorer. You got to look at his experience. You got to look at what he might charge potentially, and keep the quality and the relationship in the forefront rather than always interjecting money into the situation. Okay. Because if the guy is an enthusiastic proponent of yours, and you can turn a guy who doesn't care into a proponent. But it is never about money. It's about, I like this guy. I want to do a good job for this man or this woman, and I feel like that I can do them a good job. I can charge them a fair price, and we can both come away with something, which is a good relationship. Our saying here is we only have two guarantees here, and they're both happiness. Okay. And if you're not happy coming in the door for whatever reason, some other emotional problem that we can't fix.
Right.
I can't fix that by building you a car. I can't fix that by doing anything. Your problems are going to be dragged into my relationship with you, and I don't want to be in those relationships. So you got to be really careful as a restorer and as a person restoring a car that you set up the right initial relationship, and sometimes that means don't have one. Right. If you're not hearing things you like and things are going a little negative, then, or he won't spend the time to explain his basic point of view, keep looking. Okay. You're not with the right guy yet.
I imagine as part of the conversation, is it a good idea to agree to a price up front?
Well, everybody would like to do that, and I can tell you from experience that it doesn't work. Because in the mind of the restorer, he's always thinking, regardless of whether it's out front or not, he's always thinking, oh my God, I got a budget. If I pass the budget, then I'm going to be paying for it.
You're donating to the cause.
Yeah, and I have done that. I mean, I've done it a number of times, but it isn't any fun. I'm not here anymore at my age to subsidize restorations. I am here to do them for a reasonable cost and do them honestly. that's one of the reasons we pick valuable cars and rare cars. That's all we do anymore, because they tend to have a higher ceiling, so that when the final price is achieved, then the owner can say, well, you know, I spent about what it's worth, and not be regretting the entire experience.
Right. Yeah. There's always been those stories out there where someone's spent twice as much, let's say,
or 3 times.
Yeah, or 3 times as much money as the car is ultimately going to be
Now,
worth.
if you just want to do that, I mean,
if
you
it's
should.
a sentimental thing, or
yeah, maybe it's
you
your
wanna
grandmother's car and it's only worth 10 grand, and you want to spend a lot more than that, then that, you know, bless you. But let's be honest, if you really are looking at this in a responsible kind of way, and it's a car, but you'd like it to be round about what it's worth when you're done, then you need to exercise some care. And that works on both sides of the equation. And principally, it's with the restorer. And if you feel like his heart's in it and he really enjoys what he does, he's going to be representing you almost as much as he represents himself. And that's what I try to do, and that's what Walker does. You know, he says things like, Dad, we can't charge him for that. You don't have to be here to represent yourself. We're going to represent you in the process. And if you get a bill, it's because we actually did the work. Sometimes we don't even get paid to do the work. If we had to do it twice, we only get charged once.
Right.
See what I mean? So that's really important about the whole process. That you have that honesty and that open line of communication. That takes hours and hours sometimes in the very beginning.
Most of the time, I'm sure there's going to be some deviations, some decisions to make, some choices to
exactly
through. You know, how does that relationship work as far as, I mean, right down to picking a color or a texture or something? Like, how does that work?
Well, if you stick with the same car over and over and over, it tends to get easier on both sides of the equation, because the person now has an opportunity to look at colors. Is very important. People overlook it all the time.
Okay.
And there are certain cars that need to be certain colors. I don't make up these rules.
Right.
They just are there, and you have to abide by them. To be a silly example would be paint any car pink.
Right.
We don't need to know that that's not an option.
Right.
Okay. There are certain blues that really are very detract greatly from the value and the appearance of cars. This is about the same way a woman or a man would dress. You have to think about that and stand back and say, you can't say things like, I like blue, so all my cars are going to be blue.
Right.
That's not a reason to paint a car blue.
Right.
That's a statement about what you like, but that car may not like that color, and so you got to stand back and say, what is that color like? And to be able to judge easily and fairly, you have to see the car in different colors.
Okay.
So you can look online. That's one huge benefit of the internet, is you can now see it in maroon, and you can see it in black, and you can see it in green, and if you can't, you can actually Photoshop any car into that color and adjudicate whether or not it's a car you want to live with. This is a long-range relationship.
Yeah.
And I can tell you for a fact, I've had some cars 50 years, and I continue to come around the corner and get the old Yaha look because I picked the right color 50 years ago.
Yeah.
The Cobra is a perfect example where it was a white car originally. Well, that ain't going to happen on my watch. So, you know, we found, this is years later after we did it, and I looked at about 50 Cobras. This is back when there weren't any reproductions. And I just looked at every color that was out there, and the silver just stood out, played beautifully with the shadow lines of that car. Yeah. And so I painted it silver. And I had a near-death experience with a 427, and where I walked in front of him as he came out of a garage, and it was silver. And I can still play that back in my mind. That was 30 years ago. But those kinds of things never happen if you don't think about all the variations and then settle with 3 or 4 or 5. We've had customers take a year to figure it out, and I gave them all the time they wanted. Sometimes if a car, for instance, comes a particular color, that's a good thing, but it can also be a very bad thing, because if a car is painted the wrong color at the factory, why would you want to repeat that mistake twice? And there are people who do it all the time.
Right.
Well, this car came eggshell green or something.
Yeah, right.
Well, and it just kills the appearance of the car.
Yeah.
Why would you do that twice? Paint it some color that's more attractive. Pretend that you're the original owner, and you had that option. There are you know, a peacock of colors that you can pick, and a lot of cars really suffer in certain colors, and they really are a lot better in others.
What are your favorite recommendations for as far as safety goes for someone who's going to be driving it?
Well, our big thing is brakes.
Okay.
that's one of the reasons we started putting disc brakes on the Zephyrs. Before 39, everything was mechanical brakes. And mechanical brakes, when they're absolutely at their finest, will stop a car just as fast as a hydraulic brake. However, the number of people that know how to do it properly and maintain them, of course, is decreasing as we speak. So hydraulic brakes it's much easier. You got to remember, we think about what this car is going to happen to this car when it leaves here. Right. We can't just say, oh, well, you know, see you later, hope things go well. Because these people have established a relationship here, and one of our goals is to make sure the car is safe. And that's number one on the safety list. Yep. So hydraulic brakes are easier to maintain, they're easier to be taken care of, and wherever they live, in Ohio or California or whatever, everybody can work on hydraulic brakes. Very few people can work on mechanical brakes. They stopped in 38, so we're going to try, if it makes sense, to try and put hydraulic brakes on it. That's a given. The rest of the car, frankly, the rest of the car is so big and so well built that the thing that I fear most is that the driver will get hurt, not the car. Okay. Yeah. We got to protect the driver. Yeah. And that means your family. It means your family could be in the car. And if I had to get hit in a Volkswagen Beetle or a 38 Zephyr, I don't think you need to figure out what the physics are there. Yeah. I have seen both of them in accidents, and I can tell you for a fact that you're much safer in a bigger car. That's just physics. Yeah, I'm not making this stuff up. Yeah. But it also needs to be able to stop properly. And so because you can be the cause of the accident, not the result. So brakes are incredibly important, so we spend a lot of time on that. Really, mint original cars, I think that's their one failing. I don't mind doing them original. I think with some cars they could stand to be upgraded a bit. And I find a lot of receptivity to that lately, that they want to drive them. They don't want to just sit in the living room and watch it spin around with a disco ball. Right. That's not their intent. Their intent is to get out and drive it. I had an interesting conversation with a lady the other day about automatic as opposed to stick, and she said, well, my girls were raised to drive sticks. Okay. So we're not putting no automatic in the car. Right. Okay. So you have to elicit this information. Right. Right. And get their view of things, not always be, you know,
and
pontificating
everybody's priorities
to them.
can be a little different.
That's right. If they're different than mine, it's their car. I never lose track of that. Toward the end, it almost always requires some patience, because the things you thought were fixed, frankly, aren't yet, or they're not adjusted properly. So that's why we put them through the round the block test, which means we have about a mile going around our block here, so we'll do that 5-6 times. No one's ever been able to pass the first route. It's just not, you got so many things going on there.
Too many variables.
Too many variables. Yeah. So that's why we do it. We're not going to just finish the car and say, hey, I hope it works out, you know. Right. Because these people have spent a lot of time and a good deal of money, and they deserve to have the car sorted. Yeah. And so sorted means go out and find out what's still wrong with it, or adjust something to make it stop better, start better, all the things that a car has to do. Mercifully, with older cars, there are less things to go wrong. One of the reasons I won't do 50s cars, or I don't like doing 50s and 60s cars, there's just too many things going on there. Yeah. So it ends up that you end up redoing more things, which can end up costing more money. And of course, in 60s and 50s cars have a ceiling. It's pretty easy to go beyond their budget. That's not true of all of them, but you know, Skylark's an obvious example of a exception to the rule. But if you get into a 55 Chevrolet, you're bumping up against a budget without doubt, and you just can't spend that much time on them. They're very complicated, and so that's why I like 30s cars. We've kind of moved in that direction because there's less of the cars to consider, less things to fix, less things to find, and so you go out the other side with a better result and quicker. Which is a big deal to both people. I tell people I don't want it in here for a year and a half. I don't. I want. By the time it's been here 3 or 4 months, I want it out of here. I mean, I want to move. I'm at the age I don't want to watch the same car for a long time. I'd rather see it get out there and get done. That's one of the reasons we kind of push on them to get them done.
Okay, I'm going to ask you what might be uncomfortable for some people, but we talk about money. Well, maybe that's not all you talk about or the first thing you talk about.
Right.
But sooner or later, money is part of the deal,
sure,
obviously.
Sure.
What is typical? What should someone expect as typical, as far as how the money is sent or displaced? I mean, I've heard horror stories, people writing a big check and then nothing ever happens to the car, and the people go out of business. Or there've been nightmare horror stories.
I think that's you're setting up yourself for failure when you send a giant check.
Yeah. So what's the best way to do it?
I think it should be a moderate amount of money, but it should cover at least 2 or 3 weeks of shop time and some materials, and of course then things like paint bills are going to come in, which could be $3,000 or $4,000.
Obviously,
I mean, that's got one that $4,000 for paint.
Yeah.
Chrome bills can be expensive, but the 30s cars, that's about the end of your horror story, because there's nothing much left after that. The cars are simple. The interiors are straightforward. Once you get past the front seat, the rest of it is just flat panels. And so you don't have all of the complexity you have in later cars.
Right.
And
but as far as the general idea of money,
how does money flow? It has to go according to the way the cars progress. In our case, of course, we do video and photography. And if we feel like it's necessary, we'll augment it with some more. It's really based on what the customer wants to see. We want them to believe that they have a portal into the building, so they can say, "I want to see this," and we'll show them that. It doesn't happen a whole lot because we're proactive about doing that, and we want to give them a full picture, because a lot of these people collect these things. They make it into a book. It's part of the history of the car, and it's important to not only to the history of the car, but the value of the car.
Sure.
So we want to photo document that or video document that, so that they have a window into what's going on here, and they can say, well, when I send a check, I know where it's going. And as long as those checks are not overly large or overly small, you have a good relationship.
There's obviously going to be some kind of an agreement. There's two people.
Exactly.
You're getting something underway. How do you come to an agreement on what's going to happen?
Well, we present a contract to the customer so that they can read it. The last time I sent one to a lawyer, he said he thought it was cute, and he signed it anyway. Because all we're trying to do is take our experience and try to formalize it so we don't have misunderstandings. We don't have arguments, we don't have problems, but we do have misunderstandings, like anyone. So it's a complex process. Some people are real adept at it, and some people have never done it before. And we want to make sure the people that haven't done it before are explained in thorough detail. You never want to assume anything with a customer. They are what supports us. We have a duty to them to explain why these things are costing money. A $4,000 paint bill, something you got to explain to people. That doesn't make any sense to some people. And if necessary, I'll send them a copy of the invoice. I'm happy to do that. We don't get a lot of questions about what we present to them, but we offer it. If they need clarification or certification, we're happy to do that. I think it's just a matter of openness. And I have a state of the car call that I make. The other thing that's really important is limit the number of cars. If you see 5 guys working in a shop and you see 20 cars, you can do the math.
There's a problem.
Your car's not going to get worked on. That's the first thing you ask: how many cars are you working on right now? And what happens is, it's like I call it the bumblebee. They go around, we'll do a little bit of work on it, and they send you another bill. And they do a little work on it, send you another. It may not even be connected to the work they did. It's connected more to the money they want or need, which is ridiculous. But people just send money. And then pretty soon you realize nobody's working on my car, it's not going anywhere, so maybe something's gone wrong here. There has to be accountability both ways. He's got to pay and you got to explain. And once you do that, the problems tend to be very minor.
What should a customer feel free to ask questions, or what?
I think it's an obligation to ask questions. Even if you're not conversant in this sort of thing and you feel awkward about it, ask them to explain it to you. You're paying them.
Don't be shy about
No, please don't, because a good, honest guy will love the opportunity. A guy who's not doing his job will hate the opportunity, because you're going to out him, and you need to get rid of him. And if a car gets into a situation like that, pay the bill, get your friend in the neighborhood to go get it, and get out of there. There are other places to go. Now you need another place to go before you pull the plug on a guy. But I mean, I don't have it happen because I don't let it happen. I really stay in touch with people, and I can hear from the tone of their voice if they're happy or they're sad, or And we communicate a lot because I think it's part of my job, and we only have a limited number of cars in here at one time.
Yeah.
So that really facilitates that. We just got a 39 Lincoln Zephyr coupe that's purported to be a barn find. The definition of that has moves about every 20 minutes, so I'm not going to go there.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is it tends to imply an original car with mostly original equipment, original paint, original upholstery, and original motor.
Right.
If any one of those three biggies are not there, it's not a barn find. You're kidding.
Right.
You're just hoping that you can call it a barn find. The other problem with a barn find is if it still has problems, what are you going to do with it? You're going to sit around and say, it's a barn find. Well, but you still got to drive it, right? Unless you want to go back to the one in the living room with a disco ball, and now it doesn't look so good. So something's got to be done to make it operatable. So what we do is we do an assessment on day one that a car hits here, and that 39 went through that inspection process. We have 3 guys do it. So if somebody misses something, the other guy will pick up on it. There's a lot of experience in that 3 people. I mean, over 100 years. So they're going to be looking for things that are wrong because we want to catch them now.
Right.
We don't want to catch them 2 months from now. So we want to give the customer
as few surprises as possible.
No, because why didn't you find it? Was it brake fluid going all over the floor? Was that hiding from you? Of course not.
Right.
But people just throw them in the corner, and then 2 months later, they go, "Oh, well, what's wrong with it?" Well, you need to do that when it drives in the door.
Right.
And photo document it, go over it, and then get on the phone with the customer and walk around with a phone in your hand, looking at the car, and make decisions, individual decisions.
Right.
Are we going to fix this? Yes or no? Are we going to do this? Yes or no? And then what happens, of course, is now you have a baseline that of communication, so that he's not going to say, "Why did you spend 20 hours fixing the door? I told you I didn't want the door fixed."
Yeah.
You have conversations like that, things are going to go around the bend really quick.
Right.
So we got to know what he wants to fix, and even as important as that is, what does he not want to fix?
Right.
And we're going to be proactive on his behalf. It really is a good original car. It was purported to be a barn find, which I guess in some ways it is, but they were very truthful about the fact the way it operated was excellent. And we had 3 guys take it around the block, stop, start, slam on the brakes, accelerate, and we're having a real hard time finding something wrong with that car.
Thank you as always for watching and supporting the channel. I have an honest interest in these things, and it's enjoyable for me to learn a lot, and I hope you're learning and enjoying the content. Please let other people know about the channel if you have a moment. Love to see it grow some more and take you along with us. Have a great day.